greatest surveillance capabilities that we've ever seen in history. Now, what they will argue is that they don't use this for nefarious purposes against American citizens. The internet is massively complex and so much of it is invisible. Service providers, technicians, engineers, the phone number,
Okay.
right?
This is the whole problem. I glaze over because it's like the IT guy comes into your office and you go, oh, shit.
In fairness,
Oh, shit. Don't teach me anything. I don't want to learn.
the good news is there's no program named the dick pic program. The bad news is they are still collecting everybody's information, including your dick pics.
The most visible line in the sand for people. Can they see my dick? 702 surveillance. Can they see my dick?
Yes.
Executive Order 12333. Dick or no dick?
Yes.
Upstream.
Upstream is how they snatch your junk as it transits the internet.
Okay, mystic.
If you're describing your junk on the phone, yes.
215 metadata.
No.
Good.
But
Come on, Ed.
they can probably tell who you're sharing your junk pictures with.
Prism.
Prism is how they pull your junk out of Google with Google's involvement. All of the different Prism partners, people like Yahoo, Facebook, Google, the government deputizes them to be sort of their little surveillance sheriff.
Would a good takeaway from this be, until such time as we've sorted all of this out, just don't take pictures of your dick. Just don't do it anymore.
No, if we do that, if we...
Wait, hold on. What you're saying? No? You
Yeah.
should keep taking pictures of your dick.
Yes, you shouldn't change your behavior because a government agency somewhere is doing the wrong thing. If we sacrifice our values because we're afraid, we don't care about those values very much.
Hello, everybody out there. Welcome back to the Slackline Quote of the Day broadcast. You are here once again with the boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are getting back to chatting quotes. It is Friday, thank God, TGIF. Coming at you from Vancouver, Canada. Another cloudy day outside. They teased us a little bit with spring last week, but looks like we got a little bit more of the dreariness sticking around. We've been talking mostly this week about the high-level surveillance and the corruption and manipulation involved in it via NSA, Facebook, and Cambridge Analytica. So we will continue that chat today as there's a little bit more news. But first, we will go to our sponsor. Our sponsor today is A Shit to Give. Want to give a shit, but just don't have time between soccer practice and fist pumping and selfies? A Shit to Give will give a shit for you. Just give us all your information and preferences, and we'll spread your shitty opinion all over. And don't worry, your info is totally secure with us. That is A Shit to Give. Definitely not selling your info to advertisers and political consultants. They're bringing us our quote today from Edward Snowden during his interview with John Oliver from a couple years ago. You shouldn't change your behavior because some government agency somewhere is doing the wrong thing. If we sacrifice our values because we're afraid, then we don't care about those values very much. That is Edward Snowden from a hotel in Russia, interview with John Oliver. I wanted to bring it up because I think it's an interesting time to have this conversation again. We kind of had the conversation when the internet first became a thing. Kind of had the conversation when the Patriot Act came through and the NSA started spying on everybody. Kind of had the conversation when everybody found out that Facebook was selling our information to advertisers. And we have to have the conversation again now that we found out that the information is not just being used to sell us stuff, it's being used to sell us people, to sell us political campaigns, to sell us ideas, falsely or truthfully, however they need to, in order to get their person elected or get their person in power that's paying them. So it's corruption at its highest level. And, we're at a crossroads where we have to decide whether or not we want to be susceptible to it, whether we want to allow it to happen. It didn't seem such a big deal when it was advertising, because, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have your stuff filtered the way that you, through things that you like, so you don't have to see ads for things that you might not like. It benefits both parties, for both the producer and the consumer. And it also seemed kind of obvious, at that point. It was like, well, yeah, of course Facebook and Google are selling our information to advertisers. Like, how else would they make money? It's not like you pay Facebook. It's not like you pay Google. They have to make money somewhere. So we kind of just let that go as, well, that's part of their business model, and that's part of our agreement with them as providers of information and communication. Now, the idea that information is being collected and being bought and paid for and weaponized in political campaigns is a totally different animal. This is part of the problem of kind of this dilution of politics to what amounts to like a sport. Where people kind of look at it on the outside and go like, oh yeah, that's crazy, or oh yeah, I don't really agree with that or whatever, but that's politics. And it's like, no, well, politics is affecting all of us. These people are making decisions that are changing our lives, especially when you get to stuff like this. Like, this is an important issue that everybody needs to pay attention to and possibly do something about. And then a tougher question arises of what is there to do about it? This is pervasive at the highest levels to the President of the United States, possibly UK. Putin seems to be the one that's orchestrating all of it, or paying for all of it, which is the scariest thing. And, even now, a few days after these types of revelations, the House Intelligence Committee, Republican House Intelligence Committee, rejects a proposal by the Democrats in the committee to bring in Mark Zuckerberg to question him. Which, how much more transparent can you get without trying to be transparent at all? It's pretty disgraceful. Although the Commerce Committee in the U.S. is bringing in Zuckerberg, who is fully cooperative. So we'll see what comes of that. It'll be an interesting hearing for sure, and we'll definitely be watching it. And we should all be watching it. We've all entrusted this man, with our information, whether he wanted it or not. It's made him a very wealthy man. It's made him a very powerful man. And, if this was done legally, if he sold information to these types of campaigns, then, I think we should question that and whether or not we should be allowing Facebook to do that. And the only course is really through regulation of social media entities, because otherwise we're just operating on a trust system, which we were before, and that was fine, and now it's obviously not fine. So there's a little recourse, but in possibly private legal channels where, I don't know, there could be class action suits against Facebook or Cambridge Analytica or even the United States government for their complicity in it. Maybe we'd have to wait out the Mueller investigations for stuff like that. I don't know if this type of thing will even fall under the Mueller investigation. It seems like it will, because it is about collusion and Russian interference. So this falls under that web. I mean, in all honesty, if any of this stuff is like provable, if Mueller is going around actually documenting, found proof of these types of activities, like Washington's going to have to burn to the ground. Everybody's going to be complicit in it, from even, I'm sure there are even Democratic people involved, and I'm sure there are, and the whole presidential cabinet seems like it's involved. Like, there's no mechanism in the U.S. to get rid of that. In Canada, we can have a non-confidence vote, and just really basically call another election. They don't have that ability in the U.S. All there is impeachment, or getting rid of him because of lack of sound mind, both of which seem to be options. But then you end up with President Mike Pence, who is, if not just as complicit in this, is arguably a worse human being. So yeah, it's a pretty scary thing out there right now, to think that kind of everything that we do is being flipped around and used against us in a weird way, in a way that I don't know, it's kind of it's one of the harder questions that I think we will ever have to face, and it seems like kind of a turning point in human history on like what we will allow to happen to us. Like, this is a fundamental question of freedom at this point, isn't it? Freedom of our own mind, freedom of our own decisions, of our own thoughts. Like, you're not erasing the truth. You're just bombarding people with lies to the point that nobody knows what the truth is, and trapping people in their own bubble of lies. And like, even somebody like me, who I consider myself decently educated, and I go relatively deep into these topics before I try to talk about them, I'm questioning my own process, and whether or not I'm a victim of this just as much as anybody. I don't think that I am, but even if I'm not, and even if most of the people I know are not, it seems like a lot of people are. And the scarier thing about that is the people that are tend to not be aware enough to really decide whether or not they are. That's the whole point, is you convince these people of something that they already think is or should be the case, and now you won't be able to convince them otherwise, even if it's the truth. And this could be one of those times. I mean, you tell somebody that a private company is collecting your information off of all of the websites that you use, and to a disgustingly acute degree, and are utilizing that information, repackaging it, throwing it back in your face, and weaponizing it to try and convince you of something that you might not even necessarily agree with, or to trap you in a circuit of stuff that tells you that you agree with these things, that tells you stuff that you agree with, whether or not it's true, or if things have been exaggerated, or things about other people left out, or just stuff, you reframe things as something bad. You make a graph look worse than it is just by changing the scale. Like, even simple things like that are catching people. This article from The Guardian in the UK has a former employer of Cambridge Analytica that has come forward, not the first whistleblower, but somebody else. And they said they had intensive survey research, data modeling, and performance optimizing algorithms were used to target 10,000 different ads to different audiences in the months leading up to the election. The ads were viewed billions of times, according to the presentation. This is a former former employee of Cambridge Analytica explaining how it detailed the techniques used by the Trump campaign to micro-target U.S. voters with carefully tailored messages. So, yeah, I mean, you get billions of views on something, even if those are repeat views and that type of thing. You get billions of views. The traffic that is circulating through is insane. And you see stuff enough, you hear it enough, and all of a sudden it becomes true in your mind. Because, you know, if you see it not just on a meme, but on the headline of an article of a site like Politico, which you thought you know, could maybe trust, and all of a sudden you can't, you know, even if it's just the headline, because a lot of people don't read past that. And if you change the headline to something that is damning to one side or the other, people just see that and go, oh, it's from that source, and now I'm going to repeat that to my friend, who's going to repeat that to their friend, and on down the line. And this is exactly the types of conversations they probably had at the outset of these, you know, creation of these types of businesses. Just like, man, like, all this information is out there. How can we use it to swing people our way? And it started in advertising, and then all of a sudden, a political candidate comes to them with a lot of money and says, hey, I'm a wealthy candidate. Like, I'd like you to try and use your same advertising tactics on my political campaign. And lo and behold, it's very successful, and they start using it all over the world. And now you're wielding unparalleled power. Honestly, it can't stand. It can't be a thing. You know? It just, and I don't really know what to do about it, if there is anything to do about it, but I know that it can't be a thing. That much I do know. So maybe we'll leave it there for today. That quote from Edward Snowden: you shouldn't change your behavior because some government agency somewhere is doing the wrong thing. If we sacrifice our values because we're afraid, then we don't care about those values very much. That again, Edward Snowden, from the John Oliver, from Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. That's from a couple years ago, but obviously still resident today, especially over the last few days. That quote brought to us again by A Shit to Give. Want to give a shit, but just don't have time between soccer practice and fist pumping and selfies. A Shit to Give will give a shit for you. Just give us all your information and preferences, and we'll spread your shitty opinion all over. And don't worry, your info is totally secure with us. That is A Shit to Give, our sponsor today. Thanks again to Crooked Spies for providing the tunes. Make sure you're following the podcast on Instagram at the.slack.line, on Twitter at slackline_radio, and on YouTube and iTunes at the Slackline Podcast. You have been listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
Thanks again to anybody that's paying attention. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and bye for now.
Day by day and night by night, she will be there out of sight, just waiting. So seductive and so smooth, she will swiftly make a move. Understated, but now she's gone, and I can't carry on. There are spirits here. There are spirits here. There are spirits.